500 monsters from the basement. Yay! Or scary. I think it's scary.
I'm one of the inductors, unfortunately, was not able to be here. So we get to have a little fun with our next induction. Because unfortunately, someone at the level of, like a George Chastain or a Michael Monaghan was not able to join us. So these people who are like walking encyclopedias of horror hosts. So I'm going to ask somebody, maybe in our audience, who has some working knowledge of our next induction, Dr. Morgus. Dr. Morgus. Do we have any, there's got to be someone out there.
From the south here.
No? Yeah? Yeah! Thank you.
I wasn't privileged enough to see him on his first go-round, but in the 80s, late 80s, I lived in New Orleans, and so I got to see him and the assistant, and I can't remember the name of at the moment, but he rocked. I mean, he really did. He was hilarious. He was one of the originals. My good friend Crystal, who you guys know, Crystal Brewery, loved him. He actually made a film. You know, one of the few that made a film and had some, novelty records and stuff.
Mr. Lobo has a contribution. I don't want to see when he talks.
No, man.
Dr. Morgus, he did the first film about a horror host called The Wacky World of Dr. Morgus. Dr. Morgus is a frequent guest on the Coast to Coast AM show.
Yes. Yeah.
I wouldn't have been on, I was on George Norrie's show, Coast to Coast AM, as a horror host expert, only because when I talked to the producer and I mentioned Morgus, she went nuts. Oh, you can talk about Dr. Morgus? Oh yeah, we'll get you on Friday night.
Chomsley.
Yes, Chomsley, I think, his sidekick.
It's floating up to the brain now.
Yes, and he was totally insane. George Norrie told the story about, he's always creating inventions, and in the context of the movie, he would be attempting something that had never been done by science before. So he would be trying to turn a man into a mermaid, or trying to do something, and he would play it so straight. They'd go to a movie, and he'd become doing surgery on somebody when he'd come back. And it would always go wrong. And somehow he kept that straightness of he's really doing science in the old ice house.
Yeah, and the set was awesome. The Ice House is on magazine.
And so George Norrie tells this story because he's friends with Dr. Morgus. That he comes up and, okay, I got this invention. It's a force field. It's 100% real. It's a force field. So what I want you to do right now is to punch me right in the face. Hard as you can, right in the face. And George Norrie's like, no, man, I'm not going to punch you. No, I invented a force field. I want you to punch me as hard as you can. So George Norrie hits him in the face as hard as he can, with blood and teeth everywhere. And that was it. I guess the experiment failed or whatever. That's the kind of commitment he had to his character, and that's why you have a guy who's a host of a coast-to-coast national radio show that has 4.5 million listeners turn into a 10-year-old boy every time he
Well, thank you both. That was beautiful and fitting. So, without further ado, Dr. Morgus, Sidney Noel Rideau, I believe. Rideau sounds very Cajun. Thank you. Number 6.
Victor! Come here, get the hell out of here.
Wow. First of
all, I want to thank Jason for inviting us to be a part of it. Very, very cool of you. Everyone's having a good weekend, yeah? Graves, what can you say about our next inductee?
If the question is, what can you say?
What can you really say?
What can you really say?
What
Really?
can you say?
Oh my goodness.
Well,
the microphone up so we can hear
Say something.
Directional mic, you really gotta put it in.
Get the hook.
Now,
you're doing great, kid. Yeah. Our next inductee is a horror host from Florida, Warhorville, Florida. He was the host of The Dungeon, and besides hosting horror movies, he also hosted sci-fi movies, correct? He was in the Marines. He started his career as a announcer for the Toledo Mudhens baseball team. And his name is M.T. Graves. He had his show The Dungeon. Later on, he had a show called Other Worlds where he was empty space. And then came back again and was doing Empty Graves Presents. Unfortunately, sadly, he passed away in '07. So his plaque will be at the Horror Host Hall of Fame in Ripley's. So,
fantastic.
Victor!